Welcome to the STARTS4Water vlog. My name is Anne Nichten. I'm your anchor woman. In this series, we'll have conversations with artists who are currently working as artists in residence at the STARTS Partner Institutes. Today, we'll be talking with a special mix of artists and researchers, Sonia Levy and Meredith Root-Bernstein, who are doing, together with others, their residency at TBA21 in Venice in Italy, and Alberto, Barausse, researcher at the biology department of the University of Padua, Italy. Welcome to you all. And Sonia and Meredith, could you introduce yourself and your project and tell us in short about the things you are developing during your residency in Italy?
Yes, hello. Thank you for this, and thank you for inviting us to talk about our project today. We are four in that group, and I will also briefly introduce my collaborators who cannot be here today. So Heather Swanson, who is an environmental anthropologist, and Alexandra Arenes, who's a landscape architect, and here next to me, Meredith, who's an ecologist, and I am an artist working with film. And so, yes, we have been invited to work around Venice and to think about the Venetian Lagoon and current restoration project or a nature-based solution. And in relation to Venice and the future of such project to mitigate flood risk, water qualities and ecology. So we were also, something that was also brought to our attention throughout the project is also the invisibility of the lagoon as an ecological space in regard to Venice as this sort of cultural and historical city. So yeah, for us, the lagoon has been an incredible space to think about histories of hydrological modifications and Western waterscape change. So the way humans have shaped and changed the lagoon, its form and its ecology across different times. And what specifically, maybe here I'll talk a little bit more about my particular approach because we are four people, but what specifically interests me is to think about how political projects enact specific relations to living with the lagoon. And we can see this clearly through Venice's water infrastructure and this how this has transformed ecologies and water conditions. So I'm interested in looking at the damage or impoverished non-human worlds and that arise from those projects and speculate. And we also, all of us interested to speculate about a project that might bring more vibrant and diverse multi-species world. And so to talk a little bit about where we're at with the project. So our initial inquiry focused on reed bed restoration. So reed beds have receded in the lagoon due to river diversion projects that have increased the salinity of the lagoon. And so we thought that they were an inspiring plant, an assemblage of plants to think with because they tangibly provide habitats for different species like birds and fish. They're also capable of filtering the water and accumulating sediment with their roots. So that what will in turn help with mitigating flood risk by reducing the power of wave. And we also learned recently on a field trip that they also create peat, Phragmites peat, which might also help with carbon sequestration, actually. So, yeah, there is a current restoration project in the lagoon, which has brought back one river to flow, which is the Sile River. And the project is called the Life Lagoon Refresh. And that was initiated by ISPRA, the Italian National Institute for Environmental Protection. And they are also replanting reed beds in that project. So we have spent time at this site observing both under and above water. So this was our initial entry point into the kind of layered complexity of the Venetian lagoon. And then since being on the ground on this residency, it was also important to open up and let the question we wanted to ask to be also transformed by our encounters. I wanted to say that one method I have been using is to film and record on the water in various parts of the lagoon and the canal in Venice. And this was at once a way to get to know what are the ecological assemblages of the lagoon and what they can tell us about its transformation and current state, and also give them visibility. Alberto, who's with us today, has been also a wonderful collaborator who has introduced us to some of his work and the work of his students, which also has opened up new avenue of research for us. And some of the work we've been exploring was about also issues around invasive species, certain types of comb jellies that are overblooming in the lagoon and creating problem with fish population, and also with threatening fishermen livelihood. And there's also a beautiful project to provide habitat for cuttlefish to lay their eggs securely. This is also done in partnership with fishermen. And I'm very excited because I should be going to Chioggia, where their research station is based at the end of the week to film baby cuttlefish.
Cool, thank you. And Meredith, do you want to add something to that from your perspective?
Well, I can talk a little bit about the science component, because it's an art science collaboration. So the sort of ecological research that I'll be doing or contributing to our joint project is to put together a database of what's called fixed point photography, which is used very frequently in restoration projects. It's very simple. You just take a photograph from a fixed point, so a point that has a GPS tag so you can find it again. And it's a photograph of the landscape, so you see the whole habitat and something in the background. And by taking photographs of the same point at that scale repeatedly, you can, over many years, which is the scale at which ecosystems or habitats change, you can see how they change. And it's a very qualitative method. So you don't take any other kinds of data, you just compare what you see in the photograph over time. And it's very powerful for that reason. Also, you can use really old photographs. And you can, anytime you take the photograph, it will always be valuable in the future if you take another one. So we know that there are already some monitoring photographs of that kind in the lagoon. And maybe there are some very old photographs that we could find if we can understand exactly more or less where they were taken from. So I'm trying to put together a database, and that doesn't exist yet. All the photographs that we know of there are some collections, but all of the ones from all the different restoration projects or all the other monitoring projects, they have not been collected together for the whole lagoon. So we think that will be very valuable, and also just interesting to look at, I think, also to think about how the lagoon changes over time, because one of the important parts about this project is to understand all the changes that have happened in the past to the environment of the lagoon and how those will continue into the future. So this is one way to think about that. And maybe these images can also talk to other parts of the project as well as being useful maybe to local scientists and other people in the future to continue the monitoring.
Wow, thank you so much. And Alberto, can you introduce yourself and your work in a nutshell and how your work connects to Sonia, Meredith, Heather, and Alexandra?
Yeah, hello. Thank you for inviting me. And one of the reasons why my work connects to what they are doing is exactly why I'm thanking you, because I believe in the importance of communication and the potential of art too, also as a management tool to change socio-ecological systems. That's what I'm working on. I'm a researcher in ecology at the Department of Biology at the University of Padua. My background is in engineering, and I spend my time between Padua and Chioggia, where our field station is based. And my work focuses on human-nature relationships, especially in water bodies, coastal ecosystems in particular. And so, on the one hand, solution to reduce human impacts on nature or for sustainable management of natural resources. Work quite a lot on water quality in treatment wetlands, on natural conservation of some marshes, of sharks, for example, but also the other way around. So impacts on nature on people, meaning negative and positive impacts, what they call ecosystem services, so the benefits that nature gives to humans, which are not just economic, I would say not merely economic, but also social, for example. My research is applied, so my aim is to understand how social ecological systems, so the mix of ecosystem and socioeconomic systems work together to try to change them, to contribute to change them, of course. So the basis for my work is the so-called ecosystem approach. And for doing that, you need, and we use, I would say, the macroscope. So we try to look things from a little bit far away to maybe we lose a little bit in details while we get a synthesis about how these complex systems work. So we use modeling a lot, for example, of predator-prey interactions, climate change effects on marine ecosystem, catchment effects on coastal water bodies. We also do field work, of course, because you need to be there to understand how things work. So ecosystem services monitoring salt marshes. We work with historical ecology, and we also work with people, with stakeholders, in particular with fishers. So people who spend time in coastal ecosystems, and two coastal ecosystems we work the most are the Venice Lagoon and the sea in front of it, which is the Adriatic Sea. And I would say the most relevant project here that I'm working on is Vimine and its progresses, because it's a EU-funded project that has ended, but it's actually going on through an interinstitutional agreement in Venice. And it is about protecting some marshes from erosion using nature-based solutions, cost-benefit analysis of ecosystem services, but most importantly, I would say, what we did was to involve fishers, professional fishers, so people who spend a lot of time in the lagoon, in the design, construction, and maintenance of these protection works against marsh erosion. And the Lagoon of Venice is, I think, a very good case study because it's a very complex environment. You have nature, you have history, you have industries, and you have the people. So that's a wonderful place to study complexity in this moment in time.
And then back to Sonia and Meredith. What did you do with the information from Alberto's field of expertise? How could you manage to use that in your project?
Yes. Yeah, thank you for that question. Well, Alberto and I had many interesting conversations about the lagoon, its history, and as he was mentioning, its complexity. So that has been one way also getting to know firsthand about his research, his experience, and also the different research that his PhD students are doing, and had the chance to follow some of them in the field. So going on boat and looking at what they're looking and being there firsthand and understanding the problem this way, and also using, as I was explaining a bit earlier, filming as a way to also look at what's under the water and look at it from that other perspective, that other point of view. And at the moment, we're still in more of a gathering phase of the project, where we are gathering information and we are, in a way, immersed in this complexity. So, and then the work after the residency will be to sort of make sense of that complexity in a certain way through film and through other means.
In one of your earlier publications on the project, I also read that some of you are trying to match or to combine the wisdom of the craft with science in the wetlands. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, that was something I was very interested in, and we did go visit. There's a place called the Ecomuseo delle Erbe Palustri, which is in Emilia-Romagna. It's the only collection of reed crafts existing in Italy anymore, apparently. And so we wanted to learn about how the reeds, the different species of reeds in the wetland, would have been used in the past. They're not used for anything anymore. Partly because there are very few reeds left, because there's very little wetland, freshwater wetland left in the Venice Lagoon, and also because of economic, historical changes, just the loss of those techniques. So this is the only place where they still have those techniques. There are still some people who know how. So I was very interested to learn more about that, and I think it was quite inspiring to see all the things that people used to make from about 5 different species in the wetland lagoon, or the wetland part of the lagoon. So we'll see how we might be able to work that into the project as a perspective on the use of technology, a very old understanding of technology.
Yeah, and also at the moment we haven't found an equivalent in the Venetian lagoon. Like, we can only speculate that there may have been this sort of craft happening, but we haven't found any the same type of archive that have been left in
Emilia-Romagna.
Yeah,
because their collection is extremely local. It's from this town called Bagnacavallo, where the museum is. I have been looking for baskets, handmade baskets in Venice. I think I might have found some that looked similar, very similar to the ones from this museum in Emilia-Romagna. So they could be local, or they could be from Emilia-Romagna. I don't know where they're from. So yes, undoubtedly in the past, people made things from reeds, because people have done this all over the world, everywhere. But we don't have specific information about how that was done in Venice, so that is quite speculative still.
Yeah, but I think, for example, the project you've been doing, Alberto, where the fascine in wood, you don't use reeds, but it is a type of craft using local trees and local knowledge. Yeah,
it is. I mean, the name of the project actually says it. It's VMINE, which is an acronym we found out retrospectively, but actually it comes from the Latin. It means made with willow, because there's some documents dating back to the Roman time, where people saw ancient Venetian, proto-Venetians using flexible branches of willow and the like to reinforce the edges of their newly built homes, islands. And so, and actually old farmers in the countryside of the Veneto region, so the mainland of Venice, are still using those kinds of branches to reinforce the edges of the ditches. So there's some indications that has been done.
How interesting. Yeah.
The way that you develop the braid, the structure, the braiding, that was built on like old knowledge, or you invented it something?
I mean, half and half would say. People have been doing this all the time, but of course we did experiments, other people did experiments before, so it was like taking traditions and reinventing them a little bit in light of the scientific method, for example.
Mm-hmm.
What is your takeaway for our audience, students, art lovers, educators, people in Venice or in lagoons or cities with water management issues?
Well, one of the takeaways that, or one of the themes that we're very interested in, which I think people should maybe be more aware of, and which is interesting to think about, is that the natural world is made up of gradients. So the lagoon originally was a gradient between the fresh water. All the rivers that originally came in and fed the lagoon were, of course, fresh water. And then at the other end, it connects to the Adriatic. So it was a huge gradient between fresh and salt water. And this allowed it to have a large diversity of habitats and all of the animals that would live in those habitats. And now, with the kind of interventions that people have been making in the lagoon and in the entire region for a long time, many of these gradients have disappeared, or they've retracted, and they've become just very narrow strips. So the gradients have been lost.
Yeah,
so I think
separated.
or separated, yeah, like this. Because the freshwater, the rivers have been diverted. They don't go into the lagoon anymore, and they run parallel to it, and there's a dike in between. So there are these hard separations instead of soft gradients. And so I think it's important to think about how to live with gradients, because gradients allow diversity and they allow resilience, and but it's a different style of interacting with the environment where you can live with gradients. But I think as the world becomes more complex again in different ways, with climate change, with all of the different changes that are also happening, I think we're going to find that living with hard barriers and separations is just not going to work. They're all going to be destroyed, and or they will cause more problems. So thinking about bringing back gradients and living with gradients in different ways, this can be really valuable.
Wow, that's a beautiful takeaway. And then we should also spread this takeaway to all policy makers and urban planners, I think. That would be fantastic. Sonia, do you want to add something, or do you have a very different takeaway for our audience?
No, I think what Meredith said was a very nice takeaway, and one of the things we've been observing and trying to think with. I also think that I would probably need time to also digest all the things I've learned. So I hope there'll be more conversation after this one, where maybe, things will be a little bit, maybe the point of view would have changed a little bit, or things would have been clearer another way, and the outlook will also be there to sort of bring those discussions that also Alberto was talking about, that also our work is trying to do.
Thank you. And Alberto, do you want to share a last takeaway for our audience?
We need more projects like this, maybe more structural collaborations between research and arts and communication, and even within science, I mean, biology, engineering, but also, I mean, humanities. We need more integration, which is more easily said than done, because the devil is in the details. So these things are easy to think about, but to make them in practice is the real challenge. So we need more of this.
So would you then say, Alberto, that these kind of artists in residencies are a kind of catalyst for your field of work to consider more interdisciplinary collaboration?
Yes, they are. They force us to think beyond what we do as scientists, and also about other perspectives, communicating them, but other perspective of other people. And what's interesting for us if we want to contribute to make a change in this world.
I am sorry to say, but we are at the end of this beautiful conversation, and I would like to thank you so much, all of you, and I would like to thank our audience online, and please stay tuned for more editions for the STARTS4Water vlog. And Alberto and Sonia and Meredith, thanks a lot for this lovely conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.